Exhale the bullshit. Happy fucking Valentine's is what I got to say. And I got a gift for you and a story too. That box of chocolates right there, I tried to find a container that looks like that, and it's not very hard to do because it's very common. For the past 30 years. Why? Actually 29. Because 30 years ago today, I was told by Bill McManus's daughter, Donna, when she was like 12 years old, she was in 8th grade. And this is relayed to Carl Guttardi at Somerset County Sheriff's Department. It's in a report, isn't it, Carl? And isn't it factual? Joel Cummings, Jeffrey Keaton, and Matt Cunningham, you're a liar, abuser, and very manipulative. So we're going to mention you too. Fact is, around this date, 30 years ago, it's in a report somewhere. And because nobody wants to give me the report, Somerset County Sheriff's Department, they get this today, which is the intent to sue, because I have to file for the paperwork. And when I asked for the paperwork, we have transparency issues with Skowhegan Sheriff's Department, so I've not been able to receive the paperwork without filing a lawsuit. House for Justice, here we are. Okay? On Valentine's Day, we're filing more paperwork. Because when I got this Valentine's card, it said, you go, girl. Well, I haven't gotten done going. I haven't even begun. Because why? I felt out. And I rode the waves. And I seen the light at the end of the tunnel. It's shining. And so is my memory. So when I tell you that 30 years ago today, Jeffrey Keaton, it was a snowstorm. He wanted a bag of weed. So we go out to Leishner's, the apartment building where Bill McManus lived, the corner, downstairs on the left, okay? We go in, we're standing there. Donna and her little sister are out there. Little Bill was in the living room, their brother. And Donna calls me up to the kitchen and tells me she has something to tell me. She's making some cute little Valentine's cookies. And, you know, it's pretty friendly with the kids. But I didn't know that she was going to tell me what she did. What is it that she told me, Jeff Keaton? We're going to find out. So like I said, the kids were out in the kitchen cooking, baking cookies. Donna calls me up. And what she had to tell me? She had to tell me that she was having sex with Jeff in the car out behind the Leishner's, and that if I don't believe her, that I could go to her school and look in her locker and I would find the condoms used, and that her friends knew about it. She came to me. She told me to do something about it. Donna, I tried. I'm not putting this out here to upset you, but the facts are, I was underage. I was emancipated. I tried to protect that little girl. I left Jeff because he was doing that. When you're 21 years old, nearly 22, he was just a couple months shy of it. Tell me why Jeff Keaton got away with sleeping with not only me underage, but this young girl. And at the same time that I was finding this out, I didn't know that I had already conceived my daughter Brianna. And so then it was, is it Joel Cummings? Who was also sleeping with me underage. And he was and is part of what? Skowhegan Police Force in Skowhegan, Maine. Is that why my YouTube keeps on getting deleted? Probably so, because it's out there. And it's been out here. Because I remember calling Chief Bucknam around this time of year, 2 years ago. He told me if I mentioned it again about Joel Cummings, he was going to take me in front of a judge. And he was going to have me committed. And I've asked him about that several times. I got it on audio record, and I've shared it to YouTube, and I've got it on my call history of me calling him at the police department asking if Joel Cummings is still sleeping with underage as an officer. And he told me again, that he's not the one that said that to me, as I reminded him what he said to me about the judge and asked him if he wanted to tell me that again. Isn't that right, Chief Bucknam? I don't understand why he's out here being glorified, but all of these people that do frivolous acts like Carl Gottardi, it's still in the report. It would still have to be there from 30 years ago when I wrote that report. Those reports don't fade away. So I'm going to ask again publicly right now, Skowhegan, Somerset County Sheriff's Department, Records Department, this is coming with the intent to sue for the records and then further it with a lawsuit against Somerset County Sheriff's Department, Skowhegan, Maine, town of, and Skowhegan Police Department. Why? Because they still employ the same police officer that I complained about back then. Why wasn't it looked into? His wife can verify it. His first wife, Dusty. Because years later, I showed up on his doorstep. She had, his little laundry basket and said, you can have him. I said, I don't want him. Ask Jennifer Parks. We all know she's not a liar, right? She works for the hospital. She worked for all these people. And she was with me when that happened. Then Joel had no choice. I was a nice person. I allowed him to come live with me and my children. If I was such a bad mother, why was that police officer living with me? When I had been reported back in the state of Maine that I was such a bad mother, it wasn't until I left the state of Maine and they got mad at me that it carried over to the state of Vermont, obviously, because that's where my kids were taken, apprehended, under an illegal fictitious warrant for abandonment, leaving me with broken heart syndrome and a whole lot of intelligence and a whole lot to speak about. So I'm going to start talking, and I'm not going to stop talking. So as I'm thinking, I'm going to smoke, and I'm going to be back, and I'm going to tell you some more. How many of you remember a girl named Carrie Mikey? She passed away, but you see, back in the day when I was going through all this stuff, Carl Gottardi and them would harass her too. And then she became a counselor in some office in Newport, and she was friends with Julie Ridlin Keaton. Well, she thought she was, okay? But she really wasn't friends with her because Julie was only using her to babysit. And then when Carrie wouldn't do something, oh, wow. Julie called the fucking state, and Carrie lost her kids to the state. Carrie Mikey, rest in peace, girl. I still speak for you. Yeah, that's what Julie Ridlin Keaton did after she had given up her own kid for adoption because she said, and it's in my paperwork. Okay? Proves right there in that stack of paperwork. Julie Keaton, who used to be Ridlin from Skowhegan, Maine, gave her daughter up for adoption because she wanted to raise her without a father. So that was probably vindictiveness, right? It was selfishness for sure. She said she couldn't raise two children. She told DCF that. So she married Jeff Keaton that supported her instead of supporting Brianna. And the fact is, again, happy fucking Valentine's, because you see, this paperwork goes to Jeff Keaton, okay? As well as others, all right? So when their names get put on it and it gets sent out, you're all going to know this is a preview and this is Happy Valentine's. Why? Because last year when I filed against Jeff, I filed a $3,068,000 in Bangor Federal Court. Well, it ends up being that it was actually filed on Brianna's birthday, November 2019. And due to the fact that they banned me from coming home due to the COVID, and then before that, I was running for state rep, and my mail came up missing, my house came up missing, my car came up missing, all in the state of Vermont. Well, in that was some paperwork that I was waiting for, and it was the most prudent and important paperwork. There is no coincidence to this, and y'all, I believe in magic, okay? So, with that being said, this paperwork showed back up. I had gone into the post office when I was able to come back from the COVID ban, and I said, where's all my mail? And that tall man named Steve at Barnet Post Office, he said, oh, ma'am. He's like, I think this belongs to you. He's like, I don't know if you need. Well, what was it? It was a copy of the paperwork that Jeff Keaton said that he had never seen. Well, what it was a copy of the return to sender because he refused to sign for it. And it was the envelope proof of lawsuit filed. And why was it behind the desk of the post office? Hidden. But I was accused of not filing, you see. So I sent that off to the Skowhegan court. Cheryl's aware of it. I've got every single document that I've ever written in Skowhegan court will have a statement with it. That's going to prove to you the date that I reported to Carl Guittardi about Jeff Keaton sleeping with Donna McManus at the age of 12 or 13. It's also going to tell you about the incident that my daughter can still speak of today as my witness, and she was just a little girl. When her father, Jeffrey Keaton, on paper, we don't know because him and Joel Cummings never did a blood test. Jeff claimed her, tax purposes, okay? His tax purposes, by the way. Excuse me, and to impress his new wife, okay? Joel Cummings, he, of course, wasn't going to step up because he had already failed his family. So he's not going to say anything, and he's not going to ask for a blood test. We already know that. And the fact is, his career, he was and still is a police officer, and I was underage. But I'm still here to talk about it. And you probably heard previous about the time that when Rick Bono was chief of police, he asked me to leave state, and then they begged me to come back. We'll talk about that too. Scared that I was going to say this, and I'm going to keep on saying it. Anyhow, I still want to know. So I'm going to dig up the bones and I'm going to reveal the skeletons. Happy fucking Valentine's. In each of my reports, like I said, when I filed for protection from harassment or protection from domestic violence or abuse, the names that I've mentioned, Carl Guittardi, Joel Cummings, Matt Cunningham, Jeffrey Keaton, they're all in there. Isn't that right, boys? And then if you hear my previous videos that got deleted on YouTube, you would have known that I've also included Chief Bucknam in there for threatening to have me locked up and incompetent. Why? Because I'm telling you about the frivolous people. And I asked where Tina Static is, and nobody wants to say anything. I asked why Joel Cummings was still a police officer after the young 13-year-old boys died in the field back in 91, going towards Canaan. Why'd you chase him? Paul York was involved in that too. Paul's not the one that chased him. Who was Joel Cummings? Can you answer that, Joel? You know, I don't know if they're watching this or not, but I'm just going to put it out there and address it to them because they're the ones that need to be addressed. I got a few others that need to be addressed too. But with that being said, Dan, happy Valentine's to you as well. Thank you for fucking up the day. Your day yesterday, not mine. I still proceeded on my way. And again, happy Valentine's Day. You're going to see a part 2.